the prior to 2008. Definitely not the same person. I think I'm more, even though my brain is not full capacity, I feel very fulfilled in my heart. So I'll take one for the other.
Welcome to the Philanthropy Masterminds podcast, brought to you by DonorSearch, the show that takes you inside the lives of thought leaders, innovators, and changemakers in fundraising, philanthropy, and civil society. I'm your host, Jay Frost. In this episode, we speak with Stacey Buckner, one of the top 10 CNN heroes of 2023 and recipient of the North Carolina Governor's Medallion Award. After surviving a nearly fatal stroke and traumatic brain injury, Stacey turned her journey of recovery into a mission to serve others. She founded Off-Road Outreach, an organization which provides meals, mobile showers, laundry services, and much, much more to the large homeless veteran community in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We spoke with her about her work, what inspired it, and what keeps her fulfilled today.
Let's see, where shall we begin? This has been a few months since you and I first connected, and before, before the big television show. So let me begin there. What was that like for you to be a part of that show?
It was honestly, I had an out-of-body experience. I mean, I was in the same room with Brooke Shields, who, is the most photographed woman in America. I think that's her title. And with Edie Falco, and just meeting the other heroes. And I've only been to New York one other time, and it was very briefly. So they really treated us like kings and queens while we were there. It was amazing.
Well, take me back a little bit. How did you first hear about it, about the nomination, and how were you contacted?
So I was contacted by one of the producers, and I thought it was a scam. I thought it was a scam because, I mean, come on, I had watched the previous Heroes show, and I kept seeing this number come up, and when they would call, and I'm like, oh, I'm not answering that. And then finally, when I did answer, and Allie Torgan told me the news, I had to sit down. I had like this full rush of emotions of just like, wow, somebody thought so much to do that. And I have no idea who the lady is. I really want to get in touch with her and just let her know how much she has changed my life.
Yeah. To be surprised like that, it must have been a shock. But then again, you're helping a lot of strangers. There are a lot of people who are aware of the work, and I'm sure that they appreciate it. They probably don't have many avenues to show their appreciation. When did you found the organization? Tell me a little bit about that origin story.
So I founded Off-Road Outreach in 2015. It kind of just, I've always had a servant's heart. I've always believed in serving others. That was kind of instilled in me by my parents, who are both Christians, and my dad was in the military. So, we've always been taught to serve others. So it just came natural. That's what you're supposed to do in life. And I saw a need in our community as I was working at the VA hospital here, and I just knew that I could do something about it. I knew that I could. I didn't think that any of our veterans, especially, going to work daily and seeing the sacrifice daily as I'm at work of our veterans and what they've done for my freedom and our country. I just thought I've got to do something about this homelessness amongst our veterans. And it's almost like God spoke to me and said, Stacey, get out there. You can do this. You have a shower on your Jeep, but just a little backstory on how the whole shower thing came about, because, I had been passing by this group that had been behind the shopping center for a while. It was probably a few months before I made contact with them and kind of assessed their needs. But I didn't really talk to them enough to know, and shame on me in hindsight, that there was not a shower available to them. And so I got my feelings hurt pretty quickly. I gave a hygiene pack to a young lady, and she threw it back at me and asked me, what the hell she was supposed to do with that. And I was perplexed by that question. It's like, well, it's a shower hygiene kit. You shower with it. And she said, there's nowhere for us to shower. And I thought, really? There's not like a day resource center or a homeless shelter here? And nope, there was nothing. So I had actually created a burden for her. Like she was either going to have to lug this thing around all day or litter it or throw it away. So I immediately became more intentional with my giving. From that day forward, I thought more about what the needs were in our community. And when I went home that day, I was thinking so hard, Jay, like, what can I do? How, I was thinking I could purchase a building or whatever. And then it was right in front of me. I already had a shower on my Jeep. It was the craziest thing. And so I, went back and said, hey, I have a hot shower on my Jeep. You want to use it? And it just kind of started off the conversation. And oh my gosh, it's grown into so much more since that day in August of 2015. It's grown into my own nonprofit. We have several other programs. And it's just been amazing to watch the growth and the support.
And you talked about those first days of trying to give support to people before you founded the organization. Sometimes we see the need and sometimes we don't. And I think you said in an earlier interview with CNN that much of course, homelessness among the veteran population is somewhat invisible. Like they might be out in the woods. So how did this become something how did you increase your own awareness of this issue? You say you were working at the VA hospital, but then those vets are at the hospital. So when they leave, it's not like they're taking you with them. So how did you discover how they're living now, what their needs are?
I listened. And I went to where the needed to be met. I wasn't waiting for someone to come to me at the VA hospital. I was asking them, hey, where do you live? If you're homeless, where are you staying? Can I come see? And just really building up that trust. And then, I don't do this work alone by any means. So just partnering with the right organizations has really helped us a lot because, yes, we do showers, we do critical care intervention, but there are so many other aspects of things that our veterans need that we just don't provide. It's those true partnerships that make a difference for us.
Well, this is another invisibility that people who are not in the service, people who have not been through the service, people who don't have service members in their families, or they haven't asked those questions of them. If they do, they may not be aware of what those needs are. What are some of the needs that you're seeing that you're able to address?
It's really there's quite a disconnect to those veterans on the street who are, living under a bridge to the actual HUD-VASH program at the VA. There's a huge disconnect there. So getting them aware of what they qualify for is, I think, the key. Those disconnect in services and really the street outreach, boots on the ground, going out there and finding out has made us so successful, I think.
It may be surprising, though, for people to hear that vets don't have access to, I don't know, all the things that somebody who served the country, we might expect them to have. There's probably this perception about, well, you retire from the military, so you've got a pension or something. I mean, so maybe draw us a picture about some of the things that you're now witnessing as you go about serving all these folks.
So the other than honorable, I would probably say about 70% of the veterans that we serve have an other than honorable or dishonorable discharge. If you have a dishonorable discharge, you get no VA benefits at all.
And there are reasons for that as well.
Yes, there are reasons for that. But what I have also found, Jay, is a lot of those reasons why they got an other than honorable or dishonorable discharge started with issues that they were having in service. And, whether that be substance use issues or PTSD, and they were not handling them correctly, or they weren't connected to services early enough. And so I think it's a real shame, and I hope to advocate more about this, because I think the key to ending homelessness is preventing it. We have to prevent it. We can't. It's really hard to get the services after you're already on the street. It's really hard to get you back into learning those life skills and back into permanent housing. So the key is prevention.
Yeah, and I would love to talk to you about that vision for people having a home of their own. Before we go there, I know that one thing you touch on right there is there's substance abuse, which occurs sometimes. That's related perhaps to things that have occurred within the service themselves. People trying to self-medicate. PTSD is a great example of this, where people try to find ways to cope with their experience in service. And there's, I think, an increasing awareness in the public about suicide among service members. I think you've talked about that a little bit too. Can you just share some of what you've learned as you work with veteran populations about the need for services in that particular area and interventions to help these folks, make it past the darkest days and then get the services they need, so hopefully they can go towards that different kind of life that they seek?
Well, there's such a stigma attached to suicidal ideation or mental health issues in the military. There's such this alpha, if you go ask for help, you're weak, and we're really trying so hard to break that stigma. It's hard, especially when I deal a lot with the special operations population. So there is a lot of PTSD in that community. There's a lot of suicidal ideation and tendencies in that community, and it is so enriched with like this machismo, where you can't go ask your leadership for help, because you will be put to the back of the pack and you will be declared unfit. And a lot of those things are myths, because the Department of Defense has really taken on, they're in the business of war. Okay, the Department of Defense. So it's up to, I think, partnering with the military before that transitional phase, when you're in service and then you're transitioning out of service, getting connected early on before you find yourself with an other than honorable or dishonorable discharge. So that transition service there from military member or service member to civilian is a hard transition. So we want to make sure that we're connecting you early on to mental health services, and talking to the leadership here at Fort Liberty. They understand that, and I think that getting in early on is good.
Yeah. So in terms of the services that you're providing in off-road outreach, are you providing some of those bridges? Because I still have this image of you going into the woods to provide those showers, and I'm sure that's still a big part of what you do. But describe a little more about some of the other things that you and your colleagues are involved in.
So we offer mental health first aid classes. We offer QPR classes. These are all suicide prevention classes. So we offer those to other nonprofits. We also offer them to leadership out at Fort Liberty. So if they want us to come in and talk about that and educate, we do. And just so you know, I am still boots on the ground. CNN Heroes has not changed that, every Friday. And it's so funny now, because I will go out to a new encampment or something, or someone knows me and they're like, I really didn't expect you to be the one coming out. And I'm like, are you kidding me? No, I'm still boots on the ground. And I hope that it's always that way. I don't ever want to lose sight of how this became,
Yeah. You mentioned your father being in the service too, and I don't know if you were. Were you in the service as well? Oh, okay.
No, it's so funny. Everyone thinks I am, and what I like to say is I compare it to like hanging out with your best friend. You start to look like them, dress like them, act like them. I hang out with veterans all day, so
Sure. Now he was he a staff sergeant, I believe, something like that? Was that?
Yeah, he was in the National Guard prior to getting in to the Army. So he was a lifer. He retired after 30 years. So And then he went into another, he worked at the post office after that. And he's still working, and I'm so trying to get that man to retire. I'm like, it's okay to have 3 retirements, Dad. You're not, no one's going to beat you at it. So.
Yeah, people who have been in service, they're hardworking folks. It's hard to get them to stop. But it also sounds like that I guess enabled you to have an understanding of, or some definitely a lot of sympathy to people who have been in service in all the branches and then coming out, and what that life might be like, as well as what it's like when it's interrupted for any reason.
Absolutely. And I work a lot with on base here with, because we're just like 5 miles from Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg. So when we are there, and we're just trying to get them to know that we do have services. There's a lot of disconnect there with the nonprofit world and the military. So we like to bring our services there. I think I got a little sidetracked. Sorry, TBI.
No. But that's why. Why do you think that is? That the nonprofits and the military or the VA have this disconnect?
It's a government entity. There's a lot of red tape, as there should be. But I think that having your hands tied a lot, especially when you have a calling, you can't have those hands tied when you're doing God's work. You got to be a free, roam free.
Right. And so I guess, so establishing the nonprofit, was that a way to make sure that you were, you didn't have your hands tied, you could provide the need where it was needed?
That's right. And that's you nailed it. So I took a little peek behind that government curtain, working there at the VA. And, the VA is a great entity in its own. There's so many wonderful programs. I wouldn't say a bad thing about it. But there are things that they absolutely cannot do. I mean, no one from the VA is going to pull up and give you a hot shower. That's not going to happen. That's not, and then we have to talk about, they are a healthcare. Okay. We're talking about it's healthcare. So not a lot gets underneath that umbrella of healthcare services. So I wanted to establish the nonprofit to fill in those gaps in services.
Yeah. And now you talked about earlier about homelessness, that's a big subject. And there are a lot of reasons why people end up without, a place of their own. Mm-hmm. And they're often trying to find a way to get one. But it's becoming increasingly difficult for everyone to afford housing in the U.S. This must be a particular challenge for the folks that you're working with. Can you talk about that a bit, and where you see the possibilities for helping some of these folks who have been really on the edge and also somewhat invisible and into a place of their own?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We do not have enough available affordable housing here in North Carolina, in Fayetteville, especially where I am. And we're hoping to combat that with a better solution. And we actually have 3 tiny homes right now that we are working to get veterans into as sort of a bridge housing. That 290 square feet is really all you need. And I think another thing is the housing first model. You absolutely cannot take someone who has been living under a bridge in a tent, has no way of knowing where their next meal is going to come from, and stick them directly into a house. That's overwhelming, and I've seen it happen. And the way that it works here locally is the housing first model is what we're supposed to be pushing. So we did that at first, and I quickly learned that, you can't do that. I've had landlords call me and say, Stacey, your veteran's out in a tent in the backyard of the house and I've had to do some intervention and some peer support and go over and say, what's the issue? And this is how I learned too. I thought, yeah, man, we're going to get you a house, and that's going to be wonderful. Well, they don't know how to do life anymore. They've forgotten how to take care of themselves, how to cook, to make a schedule, how to budget their money. This financial wellness plan is huge. I mean, we have a lot of veterans who are only receiving, maybe they do have a rating from the VA and they receive, $1,500 a month, let's say. $1,500 a month is not a lot of money, and it's impossible to live on that. But there are ways, and there are subsidies that can help and other programs, but we've got to teach you that you can survive on that. You can survive on that if we come up with a wellness plan for you. So that's important. But the affordable housing is just not available. We currently have veterans who have a certificate for housing from the VA, HUD-VASH, our HUD-VASH program, and they're just waiting on housing. And it's an 18-month wait. And what do you do?
Well, yeah, what do they do? So in the meantime, what does that look like?
They remain homeless. And, there are a lot of different, let's say, okay, so the word homeless can have many different meanings to many different people. For us, if you are considered homeless in the VA system, that means that you're not couch surfing. That means you're not living in your car. That means you're literally living in a tent outside. But couch surfing, not knowing where you're going to sleep the next day, maybe you have relatives, you have friends, that you're without a house as well. So we want to help you too, but you don't qualify for those services if you are couch surfing. So you have to be very delicate and word things properly to get assistance, and let the system work for you.
It sounds like that's one of the ways that you're helping to intervene. It's as a bridge between the people who need to hear it a certain way and the people who have a need that isn't being met because they're not speaking the right language or something.
Yes, that part.
This must be really fulfilling, but also emotionally draining.
Yes, I have to often check my emotion. I'm a very empathetic person. I'm an empath. I will suck all your sadness away from you. I will take all that in. So I make sure that I have my own wellness plan in check 3 days a month. I go off grid. I love to camp and, cut off the cell phone and power down the laptop and just take some time for myself. So as long as I'm doing that, it's good balance. And it is so fulfilling to know that you literally took someone off of the street and got them into permanent housing with stable job security and all of that. It's such a great thing to see that journey.
A lot of the people who are listening will be in other organizations which are desperately trying to find resources for their work. And the question is always, how do we make sure that people know that we are here? How do we show that we're making an impact? There are all these questions. Where do we get our money? How have you found things to be before the CNN honor and then afterwards in terms of people finding you, your ability to communicate to others, and most especially being able to derive those resources so you can help more vets?
Wow. So the CNN Heroes thing just launched us into a new dimension because we're an all volunteer team. None of us get paid to do this. We all have full-time jobs. So this is something we want to do, but man, we were getting support. Don't get me wrong. We were getting a lot of support locally. But, you can't keep going to the same cow to get milk because eventually you're going to run out, So CNN Heroes just really put us on a national level, and we have gotten so much support. I have, people write me emails from Australia and say, I saw your story on CNN or CNN 10, and, we want to know how we can help, from here. And it's just amazing to see that, how 7.5 minutes of just your story could impact across the world. It's incredible.
Are people just sending donations like that from around the world in an envelope, or are they? How are you managing to then maintain these relationships with all these folks who are hearing your story?
Well, we have definitely had to revamp our website because I think with all of the influx of traffic, we just couldn't handle it anymore. So, and during this process, during the CNN Heroes thing, prior, I was just a fiscal partner with another nonprofit, which essentially means that they believe in our programs. You donate through their organization, and then we get the funding for our program. We are our own nonprofit now, thanks to CNN Heroes. We had the backing, we had the financial support, and we had the local support, which all of that together makes it work. You can't just have the local support. So stretching out our arms into the national level has been kind of scary, but we're doing it. We are doing it.
Are you doing that in terms of programs too? Because much of what we've talked about is about Fayetteville, and their need is real there. You are, as you've said, very close to the base. It's a place that's, it's not just a place where people worked. It's a home. So where do you imagine being able to take your services in the future?
Well, we've had a lot of growth in a short amount of time. So I needed to slow that down a bit and kind of, if you don't have a strong foundation, you can build a house up really quick and it get really tall really quick. But if you don't have a stable foundation, it's not going to work. So I had to really check myself and reel that passion back in a little bit, because I'm like, oh my gosh, we could do this in every state and every city, and we're not set up for that just yet. So we're taking tiny steps, well thought out steps to make this a national program. And we're working on that. So hopefully, that's going to happen soon.
Have other organizations been talking to you about partnerships where they're located?
Yes. And we actually, we're still in touch with all of our other heroes. And Dr. Stewart, Kwan, I love what he said to me. He said, first of all, he said he voted for me, which I thought was amazing. I mean, what a great guy, right? And then he ends up splitting the winnings at the end. I mean, that was so unexpected. But he said, we're opposite ends of the leash of what his work is and what I do. And so that was really eye-opening. And there are a lot of other services that we can do nationally, working with other nonprofits like his, that can extend our services. So it's been cool. It's been really cool.
What's the biggest surprise of all this for you? I don't mean the CNN piece, because I'm sure that was a surprise, but in the work itself, what has surprised you the most?
That it doesn't seem like I just don't think that we can't end homelessness. I think that was eye-opening for me. I want to save everyone all the time. And there are those people that you just can't help. You just can't. They're not where they need to be helped. And I like to say, I'm persistent in my work, but there's always going to be homelessness. And I don't know why that is. I wish there were an answer to that, but we can certainly work towards it. We can continue the work. But there's always going to be that was really surprising to me. That was the most surprising thing, that it doesn't seem like we get 30 off the street and then in a couple of months we've got 30 more. So again, it goes back to that prevention. I hope to do.
And in terms of what keeps you, juiced up and invigorated and excited and hopeful, besides the 3 days a month that you give yourself, what's keeping you optimistic when you do see that next group of 30 and the next group of 30, but you're still obviously as passionate and motivated and dedicated now as you were before. So what's keeping you that optimistic?
That next 30 people, because, they're individuals, and just to have one success story is enough to keep me going. It really is.
Is there anything that you would like people to know that we haven't talked about on this subject or about your work?
Well, I want to talk about being a traumatic brain injury survivor. I think that has a lot to do with my tenacity for this work as well. I encounter a lot of veterans who have a traumatic brain injury, and it's a TBI, so I think it's so important to let people know that if you know someone with a traumatic brain injury, it's good to get to know exactly what their story is. It's good to get to know how, because we process emotions very differently. We process mental health very differently. We're not firing on all cylinders sometimes, fatigue, and to not take it personally. Sometimes I get very overstimulated in this work, especially at the CNN Heroes award show. Oh my gosh, it was so overstimulating. Everyone's talking to you. And I'm just smiling, and everyone thinks that, I'm smiling because I'm happy. And I'm like, this is my coping mechanism. I'm smiling because I'm having a ton of anxiety. I want to talk about the mental health issues that come along with having a traumatic brain injury. I know that if I didn't have a great support team after experiencing that and coming out of the hospital and having to learn how to walk again, talk again, breathe on my own again. If I didn't have a great support system, I would have been homeless, because they send you right out of rehabilitation, right out into the new world, and it's scary.
You talked about the importance of letting people tell their stories. I'm a big believer in that. You every day are dealing with people who have a big story to tell. You have one yourself. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to make it possible for people to tell their stories without abusing that privilege, without trying to extract it from them. I mean, I'd love to hear your story as well, but also how you make people comfortable and trusting so they will open up so you can help them.
I like to advocate, to be a self-advocate. If I think the best way to get people to tell their stories is to start the conversation yourself with peer support. Your story, everyone has a story. It may not look like yours, it may not sound like yours, but we all have what I like to call a testimony. We all have that testimony. We really do. And it's what you do with it afterwards, I think. So I'm always encouraging people to not just tell their story, but to listen to others during that, because there may be an opportunity there. If you just listen, there may be an opportunity there to kind of help them in any capacity, whether it just be, hey man, I experienced that too. Here's what I did. I wonder if that would help you. And just having that open conversation. But yeah, listen to people. And everyone, if you would just find the humanity in each person, I think, because it's easy to overlook that homeless guy holding up that cardboard sign in the median, and just drive right past him and not look him in the eye. It's really easy to do that, especially when your life is so busy and you can do the things that you need to do. You're provided for. But it really makes a difference when you stop and you listen.
When you talk about TBI too, I'm imagining that you have people there who are on the side of the road that if we're not in the right place, we might just drive on by. But in part, that's because we don't recognize them for who they are, because we haven't met them and talked to them. But there are other people who have a traumatic brain injury who we might be talking to right now, and we're not recognizing it because, again, it's one of those invisible things. But it's so common, and there's so many people have experienced it. You had an opportunity to talk a little bit about that with CNN, but it was limited to a few seconds. Can you share a little bit about your story? I think that's really instructive.
Yeah, so I had a stroke in 2008, and they don't really know what caused it. It was just a hemorrhage in my brainstem, which is a very, honestly, I should not be here. I should not be here at all. But they don't know what caused it, but as I was having the stroke, I was in the shower. Crazily enough, here I am giving showers to folks, and this is what took me out. And I never really thought about it like that until recently. I was like, oh my gosh, but I had a stroke in the shower, and when I did, I hit my head, which caused more bleeding. And so it was a long road to rehabilitation, speech therapy, occupational therapy. I had paralysis on my left side, which I still have, I call them isms, but there are things that I can't do, fine motor skill stuff. I'm very forgetful. Thank God a lot of times Zoom meetings are from here up because I forget to put pants on sometimes. But it was a big struggle coming out of the hospital with not a lot of support from the hospital. You would think, you go in rehabilitation, that they would have like social work set up for you, hey, this is what you need to do, but it's not that way. So I do a lot of advocacy work with the TBI units here, not just veterans, but just letting them know, hey, there's vocational rehabilitation services that are available to you, because that's how I got the job working at the VA, was through the state VR program, which is amazing, and I had a job coach, and I had someone teach me a new job because I had no idea how to do this job, and honestly didn't really think that I could do it because it required a lot of memorization. It required learning new skills on the computer, and I was just overwhelmed. But there are services out there, so it was hard for me to find that purpose. And I talked about this as well on the CNN Heroes thing. I was kind of pissed off at God for a while because I was like, why didn't you just take me out? Why did you leave me here in this shape, for my parents to take care of me who are older and a burden? I was so angry for a long time. I think it really just took that little first, someone listening to me, a little first step of someone listening to me and finding my purpose. And then it was just easy from there, I think.
You sound like you're in a very different place from where you were in that accident, that moment. What about from your life before the accident? Who is that person and who is the person today? How have you changed? Not just your brain, but as a person.
They're very different people. Very, very different. I was self-serving. I did do a lot of volunteer work prior, but I was not involved in the homeless community. I'm ashamed to say that I was one of those people that would hand a guy a sandwich on the side of the road and be like, here you go, man, have a great day. That's did my goodness for the day. But I wasn't really involved in my faith as much as I am now. It's definitely the Stacey prior to 2008. Definitely not the same person. I think I'm more, even though my brain is not at full capacity, I feel very fulfilled in my heart. So I'll take one for the other.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Philanthropy Masterminds podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Stacey Buckner and her work, visit offroadoutreach.com. Thanks to our sponsor, DonorSearch, the world leader in fundraising intelligence, and of course to our producer, Jack Frost. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, the DonorSearch YouTube channel, or wherever you like to listen, and consider giving us a like and a positive review so others can find us as well. Check out our live webinars and webcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and come back next weekend for another interview with a leader in the world of social good. Until then, this is Jay Frost. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.